Why do you need secret passwords?
Well, again, this is something that's quite reported an awful lot, but I think it's misunderstood. So we have things...
And I have to say, I have no person, because I'm not a Mason, there's no one in my family, so I've gone to the most dreaded source, which is, of course, the internet, which I know is appalling, and I apologise, but I have no other touchstone to do it, because I don't know any Masons. So I am told you have secret passwords. Is that true?
So it is true, and it's part of our ceremony. So we have passwords, we have the grip or token, or the famous handshake, but these date back as part of a ceremony of identification.
But you don't have that in the WI, Doctor.
Let me explain why we have them. They date back from the time when we base ourselves on medieval stonemasons who used to build cathedrals, because the whole sort of point of our ceremonies, we take building a big building, King Solomon's Temple in this case, as an allegory or an example of building ourselves into better people. And we have these tokens dating back from the time when people didn't have CVs, they were illiterate, and Masons would have to prove what they knew of their craft of Masonry. So if you were a junior Mason, you had one password. If you were a more senior one, you had a different password. And all we do is we copy that in our ceremonies. It's purely used in our ceremonies. In 22 years as working in the NHS, first as a junior doctor, then later as a consultant, and finally as a clinical director for medicine, nobody has ever given me a Masonic handshake outside of a lodge room. And I would meet 40, 50, 60 new people every week. Every day sometimes.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. We talked about Masons earlier in the week, and a number phoned up, and I have to say they all talked about the money. But then when I said, can you explain what your secret word, is it Tubal-Cain or Tubal-Cain means, they declined to tell me. Why would that be?
Well, this is because Masonry...
Have I pronounced it right, by the way?
You have. This is because
you can't say it.
This is because it's...
Doctor, you can't say the word.
Well, I'm not going to say it, no, because you see, the trouble is...
You're a doctor, you're an incredibly bright, well-educated man, and you're saying you can't say a word.
But these words are all on the internet. You know,
but
your
why
listeners
can't you
can
say
go...
it to me now?
Because it's about integrity, and because I promised that I wouldn't.
Okay.
And somebody
Why
with
would it be
integrity
used between,
doesn't break their promises.
Is it to show that you are at a level within your organisations that you would suddenly say the word?
Well, in the ceremony. So it's not within the organisation.
I see.
It's within the ceremony itself.
I see.
And the ceremonies, as I say, allow us to reflect on... shall I tell you about the ceremonies? Because I think people want to know what it is that we actually do. So let's talk about some of the things that we do. The first degree ceremony, there's 3 stages really in Masonry, and you will have heard the first, second and third
As in
degree.
getting the 3rd degree, that's where it came from, isn't it?
So the first one really is a representation of birth. It tells us that we all come into the world as equals. So at the moment of born, you and I were naked little chaps between our mother's legs, and we're exactly the same. Right. And then as life goes on, our circumstances change. One of us will be doing better than the other one. Yeah. The one who's doing better has a responsibility to help those who are less fortunate themselves. The second degree ceremony, that talks about getting the most out of life. It talks about improving yourself through education to become a better person. Yeah. And the third degree ceremony is all about your death. So you know that this life that you've got is coming to an end. Right. So you better make the most of it whilst you're here. Right. So it gives you an extra dimension. So whatever I do in the rest of my life, I've got this sort of Masonic dimension which makes me think about being a better person, the sorts of things that I do, not breaking my promises by saying things that I promised I wouldn't say, which is a trivial thing. You're right, I am an intelligent man, why can't I say it?
Yes, I'm glad you accept that, because you sort of had me until then in a way. But anyway, we must park that. You've made your point, and I respect that. But why do we need to put a rope around a putative Mason's neck?
Well, everything in Masonry is symbolic. Yeah. So
is that you have to keep silence?
I'll talk to the noose in a sec, if I may. Okay. But a different example would be the all-seeing eye. You've seen the all-seeing eye on the American banknotes.
Yes, and I wasn't going to ask you how that happened, because you're not that. You didn't design the dollar bill.
You know, well, the American Constitution was based on Freemasonry. It's the democratic principles of what happens in a Masonic lodge which actually formed that Constitution, and the people who formed it were Freemasons.
I see.
But the all-seeing eye is a symbol, and it reminds us that there's something greater than ourselves watching us. And if there's something greater than ourselves watching us, we have to behave ourselves, because we have to give an account of ourselves to that thing at the end of our life. Yeah. So let's go back to the noose.
Yes,
Again, the
I was
noose
going
has symbology, if you like, in Freemasonry. It's the first degree ceremony, as I said, is a representation of birth. The noose represents an umbilical cord.
So are they all held on the same night, 1, 2, and 3, or is there a time lag?
So I would I did
up.
mine sort of each year. I think
see.
so.
Okay.
I did one a year.
On
or
you go. So let's come back to the noose. Yeah.
The noose is a symbol of the umbilical cord. Another set of things that we have in our lodge is a rough stone
Why
and
don't
a
you put
smooth
it round
stone.
your waist if it's an umbilical cord? The reality is you have to keep silence at certain times, don't you? It is an inherent threat that you don't testify against a fellow Mason because they'll put a noose round your neck.
No, that's absolute nonsense.
Well, it sounds better.
Look, we've got people from all different walks of life, serious people. We've got city directors, we've got trade union leaders, people from all different bits of the political spectrum, all different races, all different classes. These are serious people. If it was quite as ridiculous as people like to make out, these serious people wouldn't join it. And they do, and they get an enormous amount out of it.